Kelsey Scanlon now. Kelsey?
Yes, and actually to answer the first question in the chat, I have started recording this webinar right now. So I will make it available online later.
Great. Maybe I'll just say one more thing again before you start, since you've just hit the recording. Just to say that Supervisor Adams had a special meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District this evening, and she's very sorry not to be with her District 5 residents and other folks who were impacted by the fires this evening. So I'm representing the District 5 office on her behalf, and we're really grateful that the county staff have put together this opportunity for more of a tutorial on how to move through the phase 2 debris removal process.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview about debris removal and what it all entails. I have Frida Escobar with me, who's going to answer a couple of questions about how to get started. And I have Nikki Fowler here as well, I believe. Actually, no, she's not on the call, but there are plenty of people from the Environmental Health Bureau that will be able to answer calls or answer questions as well. So you've heard a lot about phase 1. The US EPA came through, they removed the household hazardous waste from your property. You likely saw a placard at the front of your property saying that they had come through and cleared. If you did not see environmental health or US EPA and you have hazardous materials on your property, please contact the EPA hotline that's listed on the recovery webpage that I'll show you at the end of the presentation. There is also a link to track the progress of the US EPA. So if you're finding that your parcel is red or not included, please contact either environmental health or the US EPA directly. You've heard a lot about phase 2, and it was very ambiguous until now. And so we're here to provide you a bit more information as to what phase 2 entails and what your options are as a property owner. This is still a public health emergency, and that the debris that is currently on your property in the mass quantities that we've experienced in the county is considered a health emergency and has to be removed in a timely fashion. Therefore, there are 2 ways for property owners to remove debris from their home. The first is either participating in the government-sponsored debris removal program, or opting out and choosing to hire a private contractor and consultant to remove the debris from your property. And that's called the private program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that throughout this presentation, as Sarah had mentioned. We have put together a flow chart for you to depict the process for which you are all participating in. The first part you'll notice up in the left-hand corner is, the incident start. So you've lost a structure or auxiliary structure due to the wildland fires. Hopefully you started your rebuilding process by contacting the RMA. At which point your property went through the phase 1 process of removing household hazardous waste. This process is mandatory and is outlined by the executive order signed by Governor Newsom. So I believe the US EPA is just about done. They've done their first round of sweeps, and the remaining properties that have not had the household hazardous waste removed, they'll either come back at a later date to remove that debris, or work with the property owner to get access to the property, or remove whatever was blocking them from accessing the property. In a minute, I'm going to let Kendra in Environmental Health talk about how to sift through your remains before the debris removal begins. This would now be the opportunity to do that before final debris removal actually occurs. So between now and that point, homeowners have to make a decision whether to participate in the government debris removal program, or opt out and choose to remove the remaining debris at their own expense. There is no third option. If you have any type of fire debris related to structures or property that was burned that may pose a threat to life in and around the vicinity of your property, you are required to participate in either the government program or do it on your own in a timely fashion. If you choose to go with the public option, you'll need to submit a right of entry permit, at which point a demolition permit will be issued by an RMA. The public contractor will come through, remove the debris. They'll then do a site test about what type of chemicals and values are in the soil and ash, at which point Cal Recycle will issue the release to the county, and environmental health will then issue a clearance, and then the hold on the demolition permit will be released by environmental health through RMA, at which point you can begin your rebuilding process. Now, if you choose to go with the private program, there are significantly more steps, and we'll outline all of these further on in the presentation. I'm just trying to give you a high level overview. But there are several additional steps that the property owner will have to go through. The first is hiring a contractor and environmental consultant, submitting an opt-out waiver, having the contractor submit a removal application and work plan, which then has to be approved by the county. And once it's been approved, the demolition permit will be issued. The private contractor can then remove the debris. They'll have to do site testing, and then a final report will be issued to environmental health from your contractor. And then once that clearance is issued by environmental health, the demolition permit will be issued as well. So we're going to cover this flow chart in a bit more extensive effort as we go through the slides. But I just wanted to give you guys a high level overview as to the complexity of debris removal for which we are all now working. Frida, do you have, or Josh, do you have any other additional comments as to this process and how property owners can get started in debris removal?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. First things first, and what I'm asking is that the applicants that have unfortunately been involved in this and have lost property structures is to submit their 2020 disaster application. And even though you're not ready to actually submit building plans, it's important to submit your application, and you can do that online, so that we can track along. The next phase is, as Kelsey has indicated, is the debris removal, which will require a demo permit or not, and we want to be involved in that. One of the steps that happens is usually you can contact me, and my information is on the PowerPoint here. Call the office, and I will connect you with my staff, who will walk you through the online process if you so choose. And then what the way it works is we'll set up an appointment, and RMA, Resource Management Agency, the permit center, will coordinate with environmental health and have a collective, collaborative meeting with the applicant, so that at that point we can go ahead and speak with you what the next steps are, and give you the opportunity to speak with somebody from environmental health that can help guide and answer those specific questions. So we're here to help. Josh, I don't know if you want to add anything from the building perspective.
Hello, yes, my name is Joshua Bowling, and I was just going to add, I think the main thing that people can do to help the process along is start at the counter, start with Frida, with the rebuild application, and that'll also get you in line and get the requirements and what may be necessary for the demo permit application. And we'll also give you the information you will need when you want to start your rebuild and be submitting actual building applications. So I do highly recommend you start with the rebuild application through Frida's team. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Sarah. Well, with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Kendra Boyer from Cal OES to explain a little bit about sifting through debris and clarify some questions that you might have about whether or not it would disqualify you from phase 2 and how to actually go about doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. Good evening, everyone. So one good thing that Kelsey brought up was disqualification. So I want to make sure it's very clear that sifting through your debris will not disqualify you from the state's program. Now, we definitely do not recommend that you do sift through the ash and debris, just because there is a lot of proven heavy metals and contamination that is in the ash and debris, which is why there is the public health emergency. However, we do understand that you want to locate your heirlooms and your salvageable items. So we do recommend, if you do decide to do that, that you wear personal protective equipment such as N95 masks, Tyvek booties, things of that nature, gloves. We also recommend that you wet down the ash. You don't want it soaking wet so there's no runoff, but we do recommend that you wet it down so there's no airborne particulates when you're walking through and moving the ash around. We also recommend that you decontaminate your clothes whenever you get out of the ash footprint, that you have a change of clothes or have something there that you can wash off the clothes that you're wearing. That way you're not bringing those contaminants into your vehicle, into your home, around your families. And in regards to what may make you ineligible would be if you use like heavy or large equipment to move this debris around. Those are types of things that would potentially disqualify you from the state's debris removal program, just because if the debris is outside of the footprint of where the structure was, we don't have any way of knowing that debris actually came from those structures. And we have had in the past where people may have removed debris from their property and dumped it onto their neighbor's property, things like that. So we do not, again, the only thing that would really disqualify you would be if you use heavy equipment and move the debris around your property. But sifting through with your hands and whatnot to look for salvageable items is perfectly fine as far as the state program is concerned.
Hello, my name is Brian Azevedo with the Environmental Health, Monterey County. Some things that should be worn while sifting through your debris and ash is some protective clothing. You definitely want to wear N95 or greater mask. If you have any respiratory issues or any other medical issues, check with your doctor if you should be sifting through the ash. You want to wear a protective helmet just in case there's falling limbs off of trees. Protective eyewear to protect your eyes from any ash debris. Safety shoes with steel toe and safety shank, just in case there's any nails or screws or any sharp objects you may step on. And protective gloves. It would be good to also maybe have pick up some water, like a 2.5 gallon jug with a spigot. So once you're done sifting through the ash, you have water to be able to wash your hands. If you get any ash on your eyes, skin, mouth, you should rinse that off as soon as possible. Also, a garbage bag for when you do complete sifting through the ash, to put all your contaminated clothing items into, so you're not tracking that into your vehicle, would also be a good practice. It's not recommended to take children or pets because it's a little harder to control them if they're running through the ash or digging through the ash, and that's That's about it.
Thank you, Kendra and Brian. Kendra, it looks like you're up again to tell us some more about the government debris removal program.
Okay, so one of the first things that people want to know is, what do I have to do to join or to opt into the state's debris removal program? And the first thing that you have to do is to fill out that right of entry form, the ROE that Kelsey was speaking about earlier, that is up on their website. And really, that's the only thing you have to do in order to opt in to the state's program. There's no other forms that you have to fill out, just that right of entry form. The requirements of, or you may want to know, am I eligible or am I ineligible for the state's program? As long as you have burned structures that are over 100, cumulative of over 120 square feet, you will be eligible for the state's program. Or if you have hazard trees on your property, that you don't have to have a burned structure, but you may have hazard trees that may fall into the public right of way or into public infrastructure. That would also make you eligible for the state's program as far as the hazard trees goes. So the majority, I would typically, we have about 75% of the residents who have lost their structure, 75 to 80% do choose to opt into the state program. Again, there are many benefits to that, one being that we take care of all of the contracting for you. You don't have to worry about hiring a contractor, filling out the applications and the forms, and making sure that the contractors stay on task and on time and on budget. We take care of all of that for you. So once the property owner signs up for the state's program, you get put into our planning process. There are several steps that go into that. First things we look at are properties that are located near schools or hospitals, nursing homes, places like that, the community is still attending and still going to. So we want to make sure that we remove the ash and debris from those commonly used areas first and foremost. Our second set of priorities are areas that may still have large populations of residents who are also still living in those communities, such as HOA subdivisions, places like that. And then we also look at the environment. So if it's near a watershed or water where there might be water contamination, we do those as well. So those are the way that we prioritize the residents and the properties that we do clean up on. Right now, we are looking at a December 1st start. There may be some work that takes place prior to that, such as asbestos sampling and removal, things like that may take place prior to December 1st, but for the actual debris removal to begin, we're looking at December 1. Some of the questions about what things we do remove in the state program. We do remove the metal. So that could be anything from burned vehicles to if you had a mobile home or a camper, things like that. We do remove those. We also remove, like I said, manufactured homes. Presently, commercial structures are not eligible, but if you do own a commercial property and you have the ability to show that maybe you're uninsured or underinsured and don't have the ability to perform the debris removal yourself, you can make a request to the county, and the county will make the request on your behalf to the state, and we'll make the request to FEMA that you be allowed into the debris removal program as well. So we do, like I said, we remove vehicles and boats. We also remove any outbuilding that may have been burned. So it's not just your residential structure, but if you have, say, dog houses or garages or external barns, things like that, we do remove those as well. We remove the foundations. If you had a slab on grade, we do remove the concrete foundation and the footers that are associated with those foundations. We don't remove piers or pillars or retaining walls. We do understand that retaining walls are most likely not structurally sound. However, those are better to be remediated at the rebuild so that when a rain event comes, we don't want the hillsides to fail. So those are left strictly just for hillside stabilization. We also do, like I said earlier, we do remove trees. Hazard trees are a part of this program. trees that either are a hazard to the debris removal crews as they're working on your property will be removed. And then additionally, trees that are dead or likely to die within 5 years as a result of the fire that's determined by an arborist, those trees are also eligible. And those trees are ones that also will either fall into the public right of way or will affect public infrastructure, such as fire hydrants or water meters, things like that that are publicly owned. We do remove basements and wine cellars. Chimneys also get removed. Some of the items that we don't remove may be vehicles that are on a public right of way. Again, this is about the private property debris removal program. We also don't remove swimming pools, driveways. The only instance that we would remove a driveway would be if there was a vehicle or some other type of structure possibly that was burnt on top of the driveway. We do try to leave as much of the driveway as possible for you so that it aids in access to your property for your rebuild. And plus we don't want to remove anything that we absolutely don't have to, that doesn't have contamination. So we will leave the driveways if we can, if it didn't have a structure burnt on it. If it does, say, have a vehicle that burnt maybe on part of the driveway, but not on the rest of the driveway, we don't take the whole thing. We just we'll make a saw cut and take the portion that did have the burn structure or vehicle on it. The other instance that we may take a driveway would be if it was severely damaged by the heat of the fire, and then with the equipment that's coming onto the property to remove all the ash and debris and possibly trees from the property. If the driveway is so damaged during that it would be left an unsafe something for you to drive on, then we would remove that as well. So that's not something you would have to do. Again, we don't remove patios, so other concrete outdoor structure, areas that did not have structures on them, we don't remove those. We don't remove seismic piers or wells, septic tanks, docks. We don't remove those types of items. But so once we've removed all the debris from your property, we do soil sampling. You'll see basically a lot of little flags all around your property, and those are all the locations where we've taken soil samples. We compare the soil samples from your ash footprint with similar samples that were taken near your property outside of the ash footprint, so that we know what type of material is in the virgin background soil. We compare the results of what's in the samples we take with those background results. If the material that's in the soil that we took from your property does not exceed those of the background levels, then your property gets moved over into the erosion control. We do provide erosion control, which typically consists of a hydro mulch. The hydro mulch does not have any seed in it. It's a virgin mulch. Do the hydro mulch, and then we do our final sign off, which is what Kelsey was saying, where we sign off the property saying that we performed all of the items that you had agreed to in the right of entry form, and that there is no more further contamination in your property, and the county will then reissue you your rebuild permit. I think that is everything in regard to the program. Kelsey?
Yeah, so were you guys able to see the Word document that I had up? Yes, okay. So that will be posted to the website, and it's the matrix that Kendra just started talking about what's eligible and ineligible. So we just received that today, and we'll be adding it to the website likely tomorrow. I just wanted to re-highlight a couple of items that Kendra had mentioned that were very important for homeowners. The first is that the anticipated start date is December 1st. So if you're planning on sifting through your property, you should do so between now and then. The right of entry permit deadline is December 15th, but we highly recommend that you get them in sooner rather than later. If at any point in time after you've submitted the ROE permit, you may cancel the ROE by submitting a withdrawal form, which can also be found on the web page. If you if you didn't already know, Cal Recycle is the agency that had been awarded the contract. So they will be the ones that will be conducting the debris removal at the direction of Cal OES. And as Kendra had mentioned, this is at no cost to the property owner. And I will talk about, let's see, the insurance proceeds right now. So all upfront costs will be paid by the state and federal government. If a property owner has insurance that covers debris removal, the owners first must inform the county on their ROE that they have coverage for debris removal. The second is that those insurance proceeds, to avoid the duplication of benefits outlined in the Code of Federal Regulations, will need to be remitted to the county. However, if the property owners find that there are items on their property that are ineligible for removal under the program, those insurance proceeds can go to remove those additional items. The county will only collect what's remaining, if there's anything at all, of the insurance proceeds. So we're not just going to come in and take your insurance money and then you're going to be stuck with whatever's left on your property. It's just really intended to make sure that there's no duplication of benefits. The county will not collect insurance proceeds designated for rebuilding purposes, but specifically for debris removal. And if you have any questions about that, you can certainly ask Kendra, because she will know more than I do, or we can try to find the answer for you. There's a lot of questions about the government-sponsored debris removal program, and I know that we said Q&A at the end, but considering there's so many, Sarah, do you mind if we answer some of these questions now?
Sure, please go right ahead.
All right, so Kendra, I'm just going to read off some of these questions for you if you're ready. The first one is it possible to leave the slabs in place?
If you're a part of the state's opt-in program, it is not.
Okay. There's burned debris all over my property, not just the footprint. Will that be removed as well?
Yes, we will. I'm sorry, I only spoke to the structure footprints, but yes, if you have hazard or burn debris on your property, we will remove all of the debris from your property.
All right. This property owner has multiple structures, including an outbuilding, a shed, and a ramada. Does the government program cover all debris removal?
If they were all destroyed and burned in the fire, then yes. The only types of structures that wouldn't necessarily be eligible would be if something was a commercial structure. So if you had your home on the property as well as a storefront of some sort, the storefront would have to be requested separately. But if they're all either your residence or a garage, barns, things like that, then those are, and they're all burned, then they are eligible. One caveat would be if they were only partially burned. At this point, if there is more than one wall of the structure still standing, those also have to be requested separately. And that's due to a FEMA funding criteria.
Great. The next question is, if an arborist determines the trees will die within 5 years, but they do not threaten public right-of-ways or other concerns, will they be able to be removed as well?
Hello, Kelsey, this is Josh.
Hi.
Hey, I had a couple of comments, and one of them was concerning the trees, especially if they're the oak trees. So there's a good chance that the larger oak trees will be coming back or may come back. And so they wouldn't be allowed just because if an arborist believes they may die in 5 years, if they're the larger oak trees, we may not allow them to come back. And they would want to work with the RMA through the planning department to evaluate that, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kendra, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so only hazard trees that are dead or dying as identified by the arborist that are a threat to the public right of way or public infrastructure will be removed. So if they're not a threat to the public right of way or infrastructure, they will be left in place.
How long will it take for each property? What is the estimated completion date for the last property?
So typically from start of debris removal to finish, it's about 2 weeks because of the sampling process. So from beginning of debris removal to getting your clearance form after erosion control is typically 2 weeks. Right now, in regards to the completion date, we don't have an estimate at this exact moment just because we don't know how many participants are going to be enrolled in the state's program. The right of entry form just went out earlier this week, and so it all depends on how many residents decide to enroll in the state's program.
Great, thank you. All right, let's see. So if there are no other questions about the government-sponsored program, I'll hand it back over to you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Kelsey, and thank you, Kendra, for answering all of those questions. I hope that was helpful to people. And for those of you who are on the phone or would like to ask a question later in the meeting, we will have a Q&A session and can come back to any questions you still may have on that topic. We're now going to move into the private debris removal program, and I'd like to invite our environmental health staff, Rick Encarnacion, Maria Ferdine, and Randy McMurray.
Good evening, everybody. This is Rick Encarnacion, the Assistant Bureau Chief for the Environmental Health Bureau. We're your health inspectors for the county, and we're very honored to provide this information to everybody. As Sarah mentioned, the environmental health team is here to provide you this information. Maria Ferdine, Randy McMurray, and you've already heard from Brian Azevedo. These are all supervisors who oversee several programs within our bureau. And each of us will take up several slides here. First up, I'd like to introduce Maria Ferdine.
Okay, I'm here, I'm sorry. So my name is Maria Ferdine. I'm supervisor for solid waste services, and I'm going to go through a couple of these slides specifically about the private debris removal. So you want to opt out. You don't want to do the public debris removal program. So you want to, the thing that needs to happen is that if, as a property owner, you have to affirmatively opt out of the public option. So if property owners elect not to participate in the government program, you're still required to remediate the property and remove the burn debris at your own expense. Comply with all applicable requirements and do so in a timely manner. Property owners opting out of the program, the public program, must submit the opt-out waiver, the application, and work plan to Monterey County. Once the work plan has been received and approved by environmental health, the demolition permit will be issued and the debris removal can begin. Property owners shall review all requirements thoroughly before planning or pursuing their own debris removal. Property owners will not be allowed to rebuild on their property until the county has issued a certificate of completion of the private program. And the opt-out waiver should be submitted to us by December 15th. And understand, once you opt out of the public program, you cannot opt in. So just keep that in mind. And also we have the application documents for you to review, so you can see the entire scope of what you will be required to do as part of the private debris removal program. Next slide. Okay. So the private program debris removal requirements: remove vehicles for recycling, collect, stockpile, and remove metals, appliances, and similar items for recycling, trees that pose a hazard to the home site or to workers during debris removal activities, or that will pose a hazard during reconstruction activities shall be removed. Trees may be cut and set aside for firewood or taken off-site and recycled per owner's instructions. If you happen to find hazard materials during the process, you can set them aside. Actually, prior to doing any kind of debris removal, you might want to, it'd be a good idea to look at the site itself and see if there are any hazards on site that, that perhaps were missed, and setting those aside. Remove all structural ash and debris from the impacted property. Remove structural foundation and associated concrete. Driveways may stay in place when appropriate to aid in erosion control during the rebuilding phase. Dust control and erosion protection measures. Structural ash and debris shall be transported to and disposed of at an appropriate landfill. Transport and disposal of recycling materials, concrete, metals, etc., shall be handled as follows. Trees and wood waste, metals, vehicles, appliances, and aggregate material such as concrete may be recycled locally. Materials must be cleaned sufficiently of ash and debris at the site, at the work site, to allow safe transport. Landfill staff may reject loads that appear to be contaminated. If recyclable materials cannot be cleaned of ash and debris, they must be handled and disposed of as mixed burn material. Soil shall be sampled and analyzed to verify that cleanup standards have been met. Next slide. Thank you. Cleanup operations and protocols. Site documentation. It's a good idea to take a look at the site and make a determination of all the material that you have on the property. Again, there might be some hazards, household hazardous materials that were missed during the phase 1 cleanup. If you should happen to have that on your site, go ahead and make a note of it and set them aside, and set a plan for disposing of that material. A work plan will be required to be submitted to environmental health that we will review and approve. There's also an application process that will be part of the work plan. Site testing and analysis. Site testing and analysis may include testing for asbestos, testing the soil for contamination, and also depending on where you go for debris removal, landfills may require ash sampling. So be prepared to make that part of your work plan. Air monitoring, hazardous waste and asbestos removal, ash sampling. The demolition permit will be issued once environmental health reviews your work plan and approves it. Foundations may be removed. I believe that foundations may be left in place, provided that an engineer has approved that and has made a determination that is structurally sound. Soil grading, again, RMA may have some additional information about that. Confirmation and background sampling, appliances and vehicle recycling, and erosion control. So all of these individual discrete steps will be part of something that the property owner will need to consider when going through the private program. Next slide.
All right, so as you all can see, there are a lot of requirements, and pretty much everything that Maria just described is the same thing that the government program will do for you. However, again, if you choose to do on your own, those are all the requirements. This slide kind of speaks to those situations where on a case-to-case basis, if we cannot reach the property owner and there's no movement or any activity, the county may conduct their own abatement at the expense of that property owner. Also, in those cases where there's inadequate cleanup, if you took note of all of those things that are required, all those extra steps that we would have to do on your own if you would choose to do your own private program, it is more costly. You would have to hire professionals, and it'll probably take more time. but we just wanted to provide you that information, and all the information, and I believe we'll put up the website where you can download all the documents so that you can prepare if you choose to go on your own and do it as a private program. But in the urgency ordinance that was passed that kind of describes this, there is a provision in there that says if it's inadequately done or not done at all in a timely manner, the county will do the abatement and pass the expense onto the property owner. Next slide, please. So again, you can start the process now. For the government program, submit the right of entry form. If you are going on your own, the opt-out waiver by December 15th. RMA is our hub, specifically Frida Escobar. You can submit the document to the RMA permit desk, and the information is on the slide before you. And that would kick it off. Next slide. And that's about it for environmental health. So we'll be standing by for questions, which I see there are.
Thank you very much for that information. And Kelsey, it looks like you have some additional information you'd like to share with everyone.
Yeah, so the main thing is that everything that we just talked about, you can now find on the recovery website. So that's just www.co.monterey.ca.us/recovery. It's also this yellow bar up here at the top of the county webpage, and you can just click on the URL. You can navigate to the hazardous and debris removal icon down here. We've now separated phase 1 and phase 2 into 2 different web pages. So you'll want to click on the phase 2 debris removal and cleanup information. And everything from upcoming webinars to the urgency ordinance, timelines, documents are all on here. If you are choosing to go with phase 2 or with the private debris removal program for phase 2, please select this link and review the debris removal requirements in totality. There are very specific requirements that have to be met. If you are not found in compliance, demolition and rebuild permits will not be issued. I really want to stress that. So there are consequences for not following the removal requirements. You'll also find resources such as how to choose the right contractor, how to start the rebuild process. I'd also really like to note that just the submission of the opt-out waiver application and work plan does not automatically allow you to begin debris removal. Those have to be reviewed and approved by both environmental health as well as the resource management agency before you can remove debris on your own. I really cannot stress that enough. You'll also find the flow chart, how to submit your forms, whether it's the ROE or the opt-out waiver. You will be submitting either one or the other. There's no, like I had said, third option. So you are either submitting a right of entry form or you're submitting the opt-out waiver. And you can find those in both Word and PDF format here at the bottom and throughout the web page. That is all I have for right now.
Thank you, Kelsey, and thank you to all of our presenters. We've been answering questions along the way, and a number of questions have been answered in writing that you'll see in the Q&A and the answered section. We're now ready to take any additional questions that you might have. If you're on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can press, or you can raise your hand in the participant section. I've got a couple of people with their hands raised, and I've got one question in writing that I'm going to go to first. And that's a question from Perry asking, whether understanding you can't give a definitive answer for completion of all homes until you get more information. If people sign up at historical averages, I believe you said a 75% opt-in, what is the rough estimate for completion of all homes? So I'm assuming that's a time estimate for being done. I'm not sure who can answer that question.
I'm happy to if you'd like. With that estimate, I would say we would probably be complete within 3 months. If we start December 1st, and again, I mean, we obviously there are so many different factors like the number of how many do actually sign up, how quickly they sign up, weather conditions, you know, with rains and whatnot that come in, access issues we may have, but I think 3 months is a good estimate.
Thank you. Okay, and we have a few people with their hands raised. I'm going to go to the written questions and then go to the people with their hands raised. We have a question from Chip Leno asking, if you leave a retaining wall that then needs to be removed, we get to use our debris removal insurance money for that, correct? And
that is correct. That is correct. You just need to keep whatever type of invoice or receipt that your contractor provides to you, showing that cost broken out. And yes, you can use your insurance proceeds for that.
Okay. And then this is a question for Maria. Do you have any guidance on when the Dolan Road Phase 1 cleanup is going to begin? So I'm assuming that's for the Dolan fire.
I think I can answer that. My understanding is that they started and they're nearly complete. Is that your understanding also, Kelsey?
Oh, sorry, I was chatting away. I'm just going to show you how you can check the progress of your Phase 1 cleanup. There is this super sweet dashboard down here. And you can zoom in on the areas once it loads. Is it not loading? Interesting. That's a problem, isn't it? Let's see. All right, technical difficulties. They should have already started on your road. And if they are not, please let us know. I believe they started last week on the Dolan fire. There were a couple of parcels that they were having issues accessing, but for the most part, I believe they anticipate they'll be done within the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, as a side note,
maybe we could take a couple of other questions while you see if you can refresh that map, Kelsey. So I'm going to go to some of the folks who have their hands raised on the phone. I have a phone number ending in 416, and you have your hand raised. And why don't you go ahead and share your question? You'll need to unmute yourself. Let's see. Kelsey, I think maybe as the host, you could help allow caller ending in 416 to speak.
I'm selecting the Ask to Unmute button.
Okay.
So they might just be having some trouble. What is it?
Star 9 to raise your hand, but I'm not sure how you unmute yourself if you're on the phone.
Star 6 to unmute.
Star 6 to unmute. So caller ending in 416, go ahead.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Sorry. I have a couple of questions. Number one, because I'm on the phone, I can't see any of the charts you're talking about, and I'm wondering how I could get a copy of the forms that you're showing on the screen.
Do you have access to a computer?
Yes, I do, but I couldn't get on to the web, to the the Zoom website, so I called on phone.
Okay, so I will post the PowerPoint presentation to the debris removal webpage. Do you know how to navigate to it?
When you said what that website was, you said it very quickly, and I got www.co. What is the rest?
co.monterey.
Yeah. Okay.
A.
Dot what? Monterey dot.
ca. Dot.
Okay. You're breaking up. Dot you what?
US.
What? Yeah.
Slash
Okay.
recovery.
Okay. So all of this will be at that website?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One other question. If we did a right of entry form for stage 1, do we need to do another one for stage 2?
Yes, that is correct. The ROE for phase 1 was for Monterey County Environmental Health. The ROE for phase 2 is a state required document that is different from the one you had originally submitted. So you'll need to submit again. And the ROE,
go ahead.
The ROE is on the recovery website under debris removal.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can go to the RMA Permit Center to pick up a physical copy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your help.
Thank you. And I'm going to take a couple more people with their hands raised. I see Ian Smith. Would you like to speak now? Oh. Looks like Mr. Smith just disappeared when I called on him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please
Okay.
proceed.
Thanks. So a question about the private debris removal option. If done privately, will we have access to the I guess the baseline sample, and where do we get that? And then also, if we do the public option, will we get all the reports that are made for all the soil samples? Does that question make sense?
It does. I think that maybe environmental health, would you be able to answer those questions? So that was regarding the private removal, how you would get a baseline and the information from that.
And then if done publicly, will we be provided the reports that are done or the samples that are taken to figure out, just so that we know, where the property stands or what the soil sample results are?
Yeah, so are folks able to get copies of their soil reports?
This is Randy McMurray. I'm the hazmat supervisor for environmental health. As far as the private option, you'd be able to get the baseline from a few spots outside of the ash footprint. So they would actually be taken away from where the fire debris is. That's how you get that.
From the county, though?
What was that?
Can we get that from the county, though?
Actually, the consultant, the actual like professional engineer, the environmental consultant that would be hired to create the work plan, they would take the actual soil samples, and they would be the one doing those samples. So they would do the sampling, they would submit it to a certified laboratory, and those results would be sent to us. And of course, since you hired that consultant, they would share that information with you. As far as the soil sample results from the government program, not sure. Maybe Kendra can answer that.
Yeah, Randy. Yes. So once the state program has been completed, the resident of the county will receive all of those soil sample results, which will be transmitted back to the property.
Sandra, we can't hear you very much.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Can you hear me now?
That's
Yeah.
better.
Better? Okay, sorry. I said yes. We will transmit all of the soil sampling data back to the county with our final completion report.
And will that make its way back to the homeowners?
Yeah, so we provide those to the county, and then the county provides those to the property owners.
Okay, and so for the public option, is the baseline sample taken on property or off of property?
It depends. So typically it starts with just your the area of your property, or around your property rather, the geological formations in the county and in the area. It may be specifically on your property, or it may just be on nearby property that has the same geological formation. But if there is for some reason elevated levels of something in your samples that don't quite jive with the background levels that we have from the mass sampling that we do, we will take site-specific samples on your property to compare.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call on Gary Millay from the.
Sarah, real quick before
Sure.
we move on, for choosing to opt out and go with the private debris removal program, the ash sampling requirements or can be found on the document titled Monterey County Debris Removal Guidance. And it starts on page 4 and continues through page 6.
Thank you, Kelsey. And for those of you who aren't able to see the screen, Kelsey is sharing the forms that are available on the county website. I see that Gary Millay from our Office of Emergency Services has his hand up. So Gary, maybe if you'd like to unmute yourself if you have something to add, please proceed.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. There was a question earlier on phase 1, and I spoke to Bill Jones from the EPA today, and he told me that all of the 3 fires in Monterey County phase 1 will be completed by the end of week tomorrow, or next week, I mean. And so the point is that if your property has not been completed or not started, then there's a problem with either access to your property or them contacting you. And so you should immediately call the Environmental Health Bureau to discuss that and find out how they can remedy that situation, either gain access to your property through a locked gate or they haven't been able to reach you. So
the phone number to contact them is 415-793-8794. Again, that's 415-793-8794.
Thank you for that additional information, Kelsey and Gary. I'm going to go to a question that's in the Q&A. How will the county remit their insurance proceeds? Will we be billed? I'm not sure who can answer a question about the insurance claim process.
I can take that, Sarah, if you'd like. So once we've completed the debris removal on the property, and I guess this is a question for the opt-in program. I guess I should ask that first. It sounded like an opt-in question. Once we're finished, Cal Recycle, who is the sister agency or a partner agency with Cal OES, who is hiring the contractors to perform the work, once they've done all of their invoice reconciliation, will submit a per parcel cost to each county, which the county will then use to seek the insurance proceeds from the property owners. So you won't necessarily get a bill, but there will be some type of invoice that you'll receive from the county that has a breakdown of all of the things that were performed on your property and the costs associated with those. And again, you will still only be responsible for providing any remaining portions of your debris removal insurance, regardless of what the amount on that quote unquote invoice is for.
Okay, thank you for that response. We have a question here from Mike that's a clarification that is about the private cleanup. So just for clarification, the state cleanup will remove all foundations, but private cleanup allows their foundations, allows the potential for foundations to be salvaged. And I had seen an answer to this earlier, and Josh Bowling, you addressed that. Maybe environmental health and RMA could help respond to that question.
Hello, this is Josh Bowling. So if a foundation is intended to be kept to be reused to rebuild, then the foundation can be kept if it's certified by an engineer that is still structurally sound.
Thank you. And I'd seen a response also from Carl Holm, our director, who indicated that there are some concerns about the impacts to a foundation from the fire. So that is one consideration for the salvage of foundations. Okay, thank you for that answer. And just for Mr. Smith and the caller 416, I lowered your hands because we'd responded to your questions. But if you have further questions, please raise them again. I'm going to go back to one of the hands raised, and we have a Kay Klein. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question, please proceed.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, my question is, I have a limited amount of money for temporary living expense. The timelines of these things concern me. So my first question is, can I begin my new building permit process concurrently while you deal with the state-sponsored removal? May I apply with my plans for my new building permit in the interim?
Frida, maybe you could help answer that question.
Hi, yes. What we would ask that you do is you can contact me either via email or give me a call. And then what we can get started with is the 2020 application. I would suggest that we set up an appointment for you to come in, and we can start that conversation with regards to what it is that you would like to do. And I will ensure that I have subject matter experts on our end, somebody from planning, of course, Mr. Bowling will be there, environmental services to provide you some clear answers on next steps. But please give me a call and we'll move forward with accepting your application.
Sarah,
Okay.
if I can add to that.
Please go right ahead.
So yeah, the answer specifically is yes, we can process the plans concurrently. We just cannot issue any permits until the debris removal is completed. But if you want to come in with the architect, start the process with the plans, submit the plans for review, we can start that along the way.
Okay. Yeah, I have submitted my 2020 paperwork well over a month ago. I have my original building plans, county approved from 1981. So I need to call and make an appointment to come in and have these reviewed. Is that my understanding?
Yes, what you can do is just shoot me an email with your contact information and I will call you back. Currently our offices are closed to the public, but Mr. Holmes has given us the direction to set up appointments for those folks that have been impacted by the fire. So we are holding them, an AM appointment and a PM appointment. So please email me your contact information. I'll give you a call first thing in the morning, and then we can talk about what your availability is and come in and see us.
Okay, last question. I'll be satisfied with that for now. Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you for that answer, Frida. And maybe you could put your email address in the chat and send it out to all attendees so that folks have that quick access.
Will do.
Okay. And this is another question for you, Frida, here in the Q&A. that you had mentioned that you had already pulled all the documentation for the burned properties. Do folks need to get copies of those as they proceed with an architect and a contractor?
That is correct. And what I went ahead and did is directed my staff to pull all records associated to the parcels that were affected that we have. I've coordinated with the assessor's office to make sure that we didn't miss any permits that are that are in our systems and theirs as well. And when we have those appointments, as I mentioned earlier, they are in collaborations with the other regulatory agencies, not just RMA. So these records are available when we have a sit down so that we can discuss a path forward. But for Chip, if you would like them, again, I'm going to go ahead and post my email. And if that's it, I will be more than happy to email you the documents. Or if you would like to come in, you can give me a call and we can coordinate some time and we'll hand them over.
Great. Thank you for that, Frida. I'm going to go to another question here in the chat from Perry. You said that the removing walls, non-retaining walls, required additional paperwork. I'm assuming this is for a private, if someone opts out of the government-sponsored program. What is needed to remove walls such as the cinder block wall shown to the left of the chimney in the picture at the top of the debris removal page? So Kelsey has the county website up and this person is looking at that picture. What is needed to remove that kind of debris? Maybe environmental health, if you wanted to speak to that for the private removal. Or Kendra?
So for the state program, for the opt-in program, there is no additional paperwork needed to remove walls such as the one in this photograph, the cinder block walls. Those, if they are being used as a retaining wall, we'll do our best to clean them off and leave them. However, typically if they're in this, like in the situation that we see in this photograph, it's covered in ash and debris. So those would just be removed, and then there would be a slope would be placed, usually like a 2-to-1 slope in that area, so that it would not have a fall hazard. But there is no additional paperwork required for that. We just do that automatically in the state's program.
And also for the private debris removal program, once your work plan is approved, you can remove all the walls that are within the approved plan. You don't need any additional paperwork for that.
Josh, I don't know if you have any comments on the retaining walls.
Yes.
Okay.
So I had a couple of comments. Just again, once you got approval from the health department for the work plan, then that's when the demo permit would be issued. And so those walls would be identified on your demo permit as that you're going to remove them. And the biggest thing would be is if they are retaining walls, then if they're retaining walls, we're going to want to know how you're going to resupport that area. And you might be better to wait till you actually do the rebuild permit as part of your rebuilding your new house. But if they are just freestanding, non-retaining landscape walls, then that would just be part of your demo permit application. And once authorized by EHB to be able to issue that, then we would be able to issue that permit, and then you'd be able to take them down.
Thanks, Josh.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that answered that question. I'm going to go to Christina Monteliz. I hope I pronounced that correctly. You have your hand raised, and I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself to ask your question. Christina, are you able to unmute yourself? See, I see your hand raised, and are you able to unmute yourself?
I'm asking her to unmute.
Okay,
Um,
let's see, her hand has gone down now. So while we're waiting for Christina, I'm going to go back to the questions here in the Q&A. We have another question from Chip. If we opt in, can we pay to have that evaluation done before you remove the foundation? I assume that an engineer would need to access the foundation to test. So this question appears to be someone who wants to opt into the government-sponsored program, but is interested in having their foundation salvaged.
Yes, so again, this is Kendra Boyer. No, if you want to keep your foundation, that is something that we cannot allow if you opt into the state's program. Now, if you wanted to have your foundation tested to see if an engineer certifies that it is structurally sound, so that you could then, I guess, in turn opt out of the state's program, that's okay. Again, I just go back to the stipulations that I referenced in the beginning of the meeting, where we can't have the ash and debris spread about the property. So if you have to, just move a foot area or something along those lines, that size, that should be okay. But it does need to take place prior to us beginning the debris removal on the property.
Great. Thank you for that response. And I have a follow-up question from Mr. Ian Smith. Will you please mention on the website that if we go with the public option, we will be given copies of our soil report or in the right of entry contract? So that's a request for people to be able to know that they'll be able to access copies of their soil reports. Kelsey, do you have anything you'd like to say in response to that? Or Kendra?
yeah, I can do that.
Great. Thank you for
Also,
that.
yeah, Kendra's phone is about to die, so let's get as many questions in as we can.
Okay. I see the caller ending in 416. You have your hand raised again. Would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself to ask your question? You should be able to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Bill Leone. I'm a property owner in Sky Ranch. We have not built a house. We had two sheds that were there that were burned to the ground, but we also had a pole that was attached to a PG&E pole, and the fire burned both the PG&E pole and the pole that we had installed with a meter on it. So we called PG&E about it, and they told us that in order to install the pole, we would be responsible for it, and they would have to bring in the pole by helicopter, which would cost $8,000. So before I call a lawyer, I thought I'd talk to you. That's the end of my question.
Kelsey, do you have any suggestions? We unfortunately don't have anyone from PG&E represented here this evening, but is there any guidance you could provide on how to work through this issue?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to my supervisor, emergency manager, Gary Millay, but we will take note of your comment. If you could please call me directly tomorrow at 831-643-5167.
643-5137.
5167.
5167. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And Mr. Klein, I see that you have your hand raised again. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, I've been told that the county will expedite our building permits for fire victims. Can you give me an idea of what the normal process time is for a building permit as to what our expedited time frame would be?
Hi, this is Joshua Bowling again. So typically a building permit, we are at 4 to 5 weeks when a building permit comes in prior to a staff person looking at it and reviewing it and issuing corrections. As the fire rebuild victim, that application is going to go to the top of the line. So as it comes in, then it'll go in a bucket with all the rebuild applications, and we'll look at those first prior to the other ones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. It looks like I don't see any more. Oh, we've got one more hand raised here. The caller with area code 408 and ending in 884. Would you like to speak? I invite you to unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Didn't really answer my question.
Okay. So the.
Hi.
Please go right ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hey, I just, by listening to all the questions and all the stuff, this is the 4th fire that Monterey County has had. So I am just curious as to why it's taking 3.5 months to get people's properties cleaned. It just seems to me like after the 4th fire, this should be really easy.
Gary or Kelsey, do you have any comments you'd like to make about that?
Yeah, I will certainly make several comments. And the first is that we understand your frustration and we share your frustration and wanting to have an expedited process. I will say, though, that this is the first time in Monterey County history that we've had such a large amount of cumulative damage. It is significantly easier to remove debris when there are smaller quantities. I will also say that we are competing with landfill resources that 21 other counties in the state are also planning on utilizing for the vast amounts of debris that they are also anticipating on removing from their operational areas. And so in that same vein, I will say that coordinating with the state and the federal government as to what they can and are willing to support our county in removing is a very extensive process. And I will also say that this is the first time in county history that we've received this amount of support from the state and federal government for debris removal. In past fires, you'll note that they did not offer free removal of either household hazardous waste or structural debris or trees. And so in an attempt to make sure that everyone was eligible and qualified for the government-sponsored program, we had to make sure that county policies and procedures for opting out were in alignment with those requirements. Now, unfortunately, that means our timeline is at the same timeline as the state and federal government. So it's very much a dance between us, the state, and the federal government. But we appreciate your patience so much. I know everyone just wants to get back home. And when I talk to our state and federal partners, I really reiterate to them that Monterey County residents are truly the definition of resilience. You do not want to wait around for somebody else to tell you how and what to do. You just want to get back to living your life, and we understand that. We are trying to provide you those resources in the most efficient and effective way possible, while also maximizing limited resources, not just within this operational area, but within the state and nationwide, essentially, is kind of where our office is coming from this perspective. So like I said, we really appreciate your patience, but we understand that you want to get back in your.
Thank you for that response, Kelsey. I'll just say very briefly from our perspective, we've been participating in some of the statewide calls on on these issues, and there truly is a phenomenal number of California residents that are facing these challenges with the debris removal process. And we are fortunate to have our county staff, Office of Emergency Services and Environmental Health folks at RMA, really committed to working through this as fast as we possibly can with the resources that are spread thin from the federal government and the state. So we have been lucky to get the phase 1 cleanup here as quickly as possible, given the competing demands from our neighbors to the north in Santa Cruz County. I'm going to go to a question in the Q&A from Britt Rios Ellis. All of my neighbors at Sky Ranch who lost their homes have received their phase 1 clearance, and we did not. Our home was labeled as reassessment needed. We also have not received our assessment from the insurance company. So I assume that's a question. Maybe Kelsey, you could follow up to share why there may still be some outstanding issues with this particular phase 1 clearance. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, that happens quite a lot. Could you also please call me tomorrow and I can get a hold of the EPA? My phone number again is 831-643-5167.
Great, thank you for that. And the last question that we have at this point in our webinar is from Terry, and that's a question about whether this webinar will be available online.
Yeah, so I will post the video of the webinar, the recording of the webinar, I think is the correct term, as well as the PowerPoint presentation on the debris removal webpage as soon as I can figure out how to do that tomorrow.
Thank you, Kelsey. And we've gotten a couple thanks, and thank you to all of our presenters, and for the to Kelsey and Frida particularly for being available as direct contacts to everybody who's participated in the webinar here today. In closing, I just want to reiterate what Kelsey just said. This is such a hard experience for everyone. And on behalf of Supervisor Adams, just want to again convey her sincere concern for all of the residents in our district who are suffering through this time and having to go through this process. So we understand how hard this is. We understand that it's hard to be patient, and we really do hope that we can work with you to make this happen as smoothly as possible and as quickly as possible. But please understand there are a lot of considerations, and we've gotten some really good information about all the things that need to be taken into account as we go through this evening. So if you have any questions, or if you'd like to get in touch with our office, please do. The supervisor's office can be reached at District 5 at co.monterey.ca.us. We're here to assist along with our county staff team, and we so appreciate everybody's participation in the webinar this evening. And let's see, I've got a thank yous in the Q&A and thank yous in the chat. So if you have friends or neighbors who didn't see this webinar, we will make sure that we get it up and available to those other folks who couldn't be with us this evening. And with that, any final thoughts from our panelists? Okay, thank you for joining us this evening, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.